Hello friends, welcome to SQL with Manoj, and today I'm going to talk about temporary tables and table variables and the difference between them. So coming to the topic, temporary table and table variable. So these both are temporary tables actually, and they are different than the normal tables because of the nature that they are created and the way they behave and the scope of these two temporary tables. So we'll be discussing them one by one. First of all, I'll go with the temporary tables and then with the table variables, and finally at the end you'll be able to know how you can use these two tables instead of the normal tables and where to use them, right? So let's go ahead with temporary tables. So the syntax to create temporary table is very similar to the normal tables. That is, create table, the temporary table name prefixed with a hash, and the column list. Everything is same, and I'll show you in the demo how to create this table. The second point says that a temporary table or temp table is created on disk in the tempdb database. So in SQL Server there is a tempdb system database where these temp tables are created and stored their whole life. And while you create a temp table, it is suffixed with a session specific ID to differentiate between the other named tables created by other sessions. So if two people have logged into a database system in the same database, they can create a temp table with a similar name. So how to differentiate between these two? The SQL Server database engine internally suffixes some IDs to these temp tables, and the name of the temp table is limited to 116 characters. Okay, so let's see how these temp tables are created. Okay, so I'm just going to create a simple temp table. Okay, so I'll just create with two columns and execute it. Okay, so as you can see here, the temp table is created, and if we try to do a select star from hash temp tab, okay, so you can see these two columns, and let's see how this temp table is stored internally. So I'll go and query the system catalog view, that is dot information schema dot tables. Okay, so here as you can see, the temp table is created with this particular name, right? So this is the name that we gave. Okay, and rest of the name SQL Server has suffixed here. So this is because if, let's say, I go ahead and create a similar temp table in a different session. Okay, so let's see what is the name SQL Server has provided here. So this actually got created, right? So let's see. So SQL Server has created now these temp tables with these two names. So as you can see, the temporary table with suffixed with A6 belongs to this session, and temporary table suffixed with A7 belongs to this session. Now, while querying both of these tables, how can you make sure that which session table you are querying? So let's try to insert a record into this temp table. Okay, 1 comma 1, right? And I'll insert some different values here, 2 comma 2. Okay, so this session of the same name of temporary table will show me 2 comma 2 on both of these columns, and this will show me 1 comma 1. So externally, if you see, so we are just interacting with a temp table in different sessions, but internally SQL Server is taking this name and giving you results from the session specific temp table. So here, this particular temp table, and here this particular temp table A7. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. The third point says that the scope of this temp table is limited to its session, like a stored procedure or a set of nested procedures. So let's check again this thing. Let's okay, what I'll do is I'll close this session. Okay, so in this session the temp table is still there, and if I try to query the information schema, so the other temp table with A7 has vanished. It is dropped because that belonged to that particular session. So the scope of that temp table belongs to a particular session. So here this table is still active because the session is live. I have not closed this session. Okay, so let's try to query this table from different session. So what I'll get is invalid object name #temp tab because this table does not belong to this session, but this table belongs to this particular session. Okay, let's go back to the slide and move to the fourth point. The temp table gets dropped automatically when the session ends or the stored proc execution end or goes out of scope. Okay, so this is the pretty much thing that we saw here. So to see that again, what I'll do is I'll create a temp tab 2 and let's query it from here, right? So you will see a temp tab 2 table created over here, temp tab 2, right? And if I go ahead and close this session, right, so this table temp tab 2 gets automatically dropped. So you can see here there is only one table that is already created here. Temp tab 2 is nowhere here, right? So fifth point says that one of the main benefit of using a hash table as opposed to a permanent table is the reduction of amount of locking required, since the current user is the only user accessing the table, and also there is much less logging involved. So as you can see here, the scope of this temp table is limited to this session only, and no other session, as we saw here, no other session can use these temp tables, right? I'll again show you. So this shows you invalid temp table. So if any other session cannot query this temp table, so the locking mechanism is very reduced and the concurrency is also reduced a lot. Okay, so the sixth point talks about the global temporary tables. They are very much like temporary tables. They are also created in TempDB and cause less locking and logging than permanent tables, but they are visible to other sessions also. You can create global temp tables by providing a double hash. Okay, so let's create a global temp table here, right? And let's see the existence of this temp table here, right? So this global temp table is created like this. So SQL Server does not create a similar name like this because it can be accessed by the other session. So this name should be unique across other sessions also. So unlike here, I cannot query this temp table that belong to other session, but I can query the global temp table that belong to other session. Okay, so if I insert some records over here in the global temp table, right, let's say 3 3, I can query these from here also. I can query from here also, plus I can query these from here also. So the scope of the global temp tables is across the sessions. So if I want people not to use this global temp table, because right now it is a global, so other sessions will also be able to use it. So if I want other people not to use it or the other sessions not to use it, I have to close this session. Then only this session will be automatically, this global temp table will be automatically dropped here. Then nobody could use it here, right? Let's go back. So the 7 point says that one can create a desired indexes on temporary tables, and these makes use of statistics, thus resulting in better quality plan compared to table variables. So I can create indexes on these temp tables. Let's create one index. So with these temp tables, you can create indexes on top of these, just like normal tables. And the temp tables can make use of statistics and can make use of all the indexes that are available in SQL Server. Okay, so now I'll move to table variables. So the syntax to create table variable is very much similar to the syntax to create normal variables in SQL Server, like declare, @sign, then the variable name, and then a variable type, that is table, and the column definition. We'll see it here. A table variable is also created on disk in TempDB system database, but the name of this table variable is generated completely by the SQL engine, and it also differs from the other similar name tables created in same or other sessions. Okay, so I'll just remove all this and I'll create a table variable. So to create a table variable, what you have to do is you have to write declare the table variable name as table and the column names, col1 int, col2 int. Okay, so this is the way you can create table variables. And let's query this table variable. So here, as we already declared this table variable, but if I'm trying to retrieve values from it, it is not giving me. So these are variables, so you have to include the declare statement as well. So as you can see here, column 1 and column 2 are the columns of this table variable. Okay, now let's see the existence of this table variable in information schema. Tempdb dot information schema dot tables. So if you can see here, although you give it a different name like at the tvar, it is created with an entirely different name by SQL Server Engine. The third point says that the scope of a table variable is limited to its batch only, like other variables. Contrary to the temporary tables, they are not visible in nested stored procs and in exec statements. Okay, so what does it mean? So as I already showed you, I declared a variable and I then selected it. But if I do it in different batches, in the first batch, let's say I create this table variable, and let's say in the second batch, if I try to use it, I cannot use it. It says that you must declare a table variable, so I have to use it in the same batch, right? So this is kind of the same batch, or even you can use the batch separator also. Let's say I have a batch separator like this, right? If I'm going to use them in separate batches, then I cannot do that. So these two statements, the declaration of the table variables and the usage of table variables, should be in same batch like this. And not only this, when even I'm inquiring about a table variable in information schema, it won't show me anything here. It won't show me anything here in the query results because the batch ended here. So I have to include this thing also in the query batch. Then only it will show me the table variable name because it exists till the batch separator, that is go. So the life cycle of this table variable tvar is till here only. So it is declared here, used here and here, and after this go, it is just dead. It does not exist. Table variable gets dropped automatically when the batch ends. Here after the go batch separator or stored proc or function execution ends or goes out of scope. So as we saw here, the batch separator like go, or if this variable is a part of stored proc, if the stored proc ends, the variable is also cleared out of memory. Okay, the fifth point says that a table variable is created in memory. This is a myth. They are also created as temp table and created in tempdb, but they perform slightly better than temp tables because there is even less locking and logging in table variable. So as you can see here, the existence of this table variable is even smaller compared to temp tables. So the locking and the concurrency is very less compared to table variables also. Sixth point is table variables are the only way you can use DML statements on temporary data within a UDF. You can create a table variable within a UDF and modify the data using one of the DML statements. This is not possible with temp tables. Okay, so if you are using UDFs like user defined functions, inside those user defined functions, you can just use table variables. You cannot use temporary tables or normal tables. Okay, seventh point is the table variable will always have a cardinality of 1, thus statistics are not tracked for them and may result in a bad query plan. So if you are using table variables for a complex query and you are expecting some performance out of it, then the table variables are bad candidate of it because the table variables, the cardinality of records is only 1. So if you see in the execution plan, the estimated number of rows, you will always see 1, and irrespective of the number of rows are there already in the table variable. So in that case, you should use temporary tables. Now we came to the limitation with table variables. So there are some limitations with temporary tables also, but there are more limitations with table variables that we'll see here. Okay, so table variables do not participate in transactions and locking. So if you have a transaction, explicit transaction, begin tran and commit tran, so table variables are not part of it. So let's have a small demo here. Begin tran, and let's have these also here. Okay, so if I execute this and I declared a variable and I started a transaction, I'm inserting a row with values 4 and 4, then I'm rollbacking this transaction, and after that I expect that after rollback these well, this inserted value should also get rolled back. But no, this shows me that the table variables does not honor transactions. Okay, you cannot use a table variable in either of the following situation. Insert table exec sp some procedure starting in SQL Server 2005. This limitation was removed and table variables can now be used as destination for insert exec commands. Select star into add the table from some other table. Okay, so you cannot do a select star into a table variable from some other table, but you can do with temporary tables, hash tables, or with the normal tables. Third is you cannot truncate a table variable. Okay, so let's see here. So I created this table variable and let's try to truncate it. Yeah, so it says incorrect syntax. So you cannot truncate a table variable. Table variables cannot be altered after they have been declared. They cannot be altered because they are not created with create table statement. It's a variable. So um, so any changes you have to do, you have to do it as a design time. You cannot add a column, or you cannot change the data type of any column, or you cannot remove or add a particular column over here. You cannot explicitly add an index to a table variable. However, you can create an index inline through a primary key constraints, and multiple indexes are unique constraint. So after I created this table variable, I cannot add an index just like the way I did with temporary table. I created an index on top of this. I cannot do that here. To create, I can just create a primary key or a unique key in only inline here while I'm declaring it. So what I can do is I can provide a primary key over here, and I can provide a unique key over here. So this is the only way I can create, okay, just unique. So this is the only way I can create indexes on it. So adding primary key will create a clustered index on this table variable, and the unique key will create a not clustered index on this particular table. You cannot create a named constraint on a table variable. You cannot use a UDF in a check constraint and computed column or a default constraint. You cannot use a UDF in a column definition. Unlike a temporary table, you cannot drop a table variable when it is no longer necessary. You just need to let it go out of scope. You cannot build the table variable inside dynamic SQL. So, okay, so if you are using dynamic SQL, so you should not use table variables. Table variables are not visibly to the calling procedure in the case of nested stored procs. It is possible with the temp tables only. You cannot insert explicit values into an identity column of a table variable. The table variable does not support set identity insert on. So this is possible with temp tables and the normal tables. Okay, so now when to use either of them? We saw that temp tables you can create by simple create table statement, and after that also you can alter them, and they support index also, and thus they will honor the statistics on the table. But on the other side, the table variables, you have to just declare them just like variables, although they will sit on tempdb, but you cannot create explicit indexes on it, and they will not honor statistics. So when do you use either of them? Both are good features in SQL Server, and a lot of developers use either of them. So use temporary tables when you are dealing with a large volume of data set. So why large volume of data set? Because on a large temporary table which contains thousands or hundred thousands or millions of records, you can create indexes on top of the index. It will also use statistics to do an accurate cardinality estimation. Thus, it will provide a better query plan. When to use table variable? When you are dealing with smaller data sets, when indexes are not necessary in a table and the statistics and the cardinality does not matter a lot. Okay, so by now I think you would have gained knowledge on both temporary tables as well as table variables, and I think you should be using both of them in a proper and good way. And thank you for watching this video, and please let me know your comments. Thanks.